you got to understand what kind of gang you're targeting to understand the operations. Like a street gang doesn't have the hierarchy like you would in a prison gang, like a FAMA, a Texas Syndicate. They have a hierarchy, or Barrio Azteca. But on a street gang, they don't have that. But what they have is typically the boldest member is in charge of that gang. And that's where like the confusion sometimes comes, because it'll be a young person telling older guys what to do. And a lot of people don't understand that. Well, that guy's the most dangerous guy in that gang.
Guys, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. The following is a conversation with Calvin Scudder. Calvin is a sergeant with the Dallas Police Department. His new book, Gangs Uncovered, is on Amazon right now. It's all about gangs, gang culture, identifying gangs. It's truly an interesting read. I also want to apologize to Calvin and everyone watching. When I'm actually talking about this book in the podcast, I mispronounced it. It's Gangs Uncovered, not Gangs Undercover. I'm telling you guys, I can't read sometimes. Also, if you like to follow me on any of my social media accounts, those links are in the description below. If you'd like to be on the podcast, shoot me an email. We'll go back and forth and see if we can't get you on the podcast here. Like, comment, subscribe. I read all the comments. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and I'll see you guys later. Calvin Scudder.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing this with me and making the drive. And so you're here to talk about your new book. It's called Gang Undercover, and it's on Amazon. Basically, I read this book, and it's basically a whole comprehensive guide to gangs, how they work, how they operate, how to mitigate a lot of the activity that's happening. Could you just give us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you've done?
Sure. I'm currently a sergeant with the Dallas Police Department in the Violent Crime Unit. I was in the gang unit for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was in the intelligence unit in the major crimes section. So throughout my career, I worked gangs for the last 16 years. From the first day I was off training, I started working gangs. And for whatever reason, I was drawn to that. And
Try to because I'm picking it up here.
I'm sorry. I was drawn to that, and been doing it ever since.
So you went from patrol to the gang unit?
No. I was in patrol. Worked different divisions throughout our department. Our department has seven divisions, and they kind of operate like their own little cities. So I worked 4 different divisions, and then I got an opportunity to go to a new unit called Metro. And Metro is an acronym for Measured Enforcement Targeting Repeat Offenders. It's another violent crime strategy.
Okay.
Went there, and then worked there, which had a blast. Worked with some of the best people in our profession. And then I had an opportunity to apply for our intelligence unit. I got the spot, and then began working organized crime, cargo theft, fence locations, and white supremacist gangs.
Okay.
And then I was doing that for a few years, and then applied to the gang unit and was in the gang unit for about 10 years.
These white supremacists that you're talking about, like the gangs, how was that like? Was that strictly business, or were they like actual hate gangs?
They're absolutely race, how would you say it? Like, that racism is 100% in those gangs. However, money comes first. So there's a thing in the gang world, MOE. Guys will tattoo it on themselves. Stands for money over everything, and that's pretty much how they all operate. So these white supremacist gangs, yeah, they may have like the swastikas or the SS bolts on them or whatever, but if they have an opportunity to make money with whoever, they will do that for sure.
So what kind of money are they like? What's their business? Is it just drugs, or?
They're pretty whatever opportunity comes their way. Meth, by far, that's their number one money maker, is methamphetamine. When I was working white supremacist gangs in intelligence, along with my team, they were doing high-end burglaries, a burglary of gun shops, stuff like that, and then fencing the guns, things like that.
Uh, I was going to ask you is when it comes to gangs, like what's the biggest misconception that people have, like regular Joes? I'll tell you mine. When I first started to like look at this stuff, uh, I thought that a lot they're just uneducated and not smart at all. And like it reminds me of like that scene from Office Space where they're trying to figure out money laundering. He's like, how can these dumb Neanderthal criminals be so good at crime and smart
Right.
guys like us suck so bad?
Yep.
But they're actually like super sophisticated and whatnot.
Absolutely. That that movie portrayal of like some kid on the corner with a gun selling crack that isn't smart is the furthest thing from the truth. A lot of these guys, if they went a different direction in life, they could be running a Fortune 500 company. Not all of them, but there's definitely um, these guys are intelligent. They understand the streets. They understand law enforcement. They understand how the government works when prosecution comes. So they're very intelligent at their craft for sure, especially the guys that when they get older. So just like most gangs, when they start, like let's say a gang starts, their crimes are typically petty. They move into more serious crimes and they get more and more advanced. And of course, throughout this time, they may be going to juvie or YA, youth authority or whatever, and they're learning as they go. And then the older gang members teach them as well. And not to mention, like when you go to prison, it's like the LinkedIn for the criminal underworld. So you're learning all these different schemes. There's an old joke that when guys go to federal prison for drug trafficking, they come out and they're all cargo thieves because they're all learning these different schemes in prison.
Yeah.
So their crimes get more sophisticated as they grow in age. And they're just developing that craft just like how you do anything else,
I was thinking that, and I wanted to ask you this is, does it depend on a person's background, where they came from, like how hard they are that like makes them so brazen in like doing a lot of these crimes? Because when I think about like the typical person that like goes to rob a bank or goes to carjack somebody, like that person would have to fight with like, anxieties and things like that.
Mhm.
And is it the same with like people like this because they're so brazen that they just commit these crimes like that?
For sure. And a lot of those crimes that come off as brazen are typically your younger gang members
Mhm.
that haven't been in the game very long. So like bank robbery is just pretty foolish. I mean, everyone knows the federal government's picking up that case, because it's a bank.
Yeah.
You're going to have the best investigators looking for you, the highly trained investigators looking for you. And it's just kind of, it seems foolish. So like in carjacking, it's kind of the same thing where a lot of those crimes, there's drugs involved. A lot of these guys are addicts that are kind of at your bottom ring gang member type of deal. But like the guys that are running gangs are not going out there carjacking people. They're not going out there robbing banks themselves. They may plan a robbery. They may plan an ATM hit. They may plan a carjacking for a purpose, but the guys running the show ain't going to be out there like that.
Uh, let's you write about like, and again, this book is like for a police officer who's like beginning or like a social worker and to like spot all these signs, but you write it from like from the ground of like tiers of gangs, right?
Mhm.
And so like from the very bottom, like what is it? Like what are we seeing? Like are those just the street gangs that are like turf war gangs? And because you write about like hybrid gangs and like rap drill gangs,
Mhm.
I never heard of those.
Yeah, so those are different categories of gangs. So like you have street gangs, you have outlaw motorcycle gangs, you have prison gangs, you have transnational gangs. So you have all these different subsections of gangs, and they kind of operate differently.
Yeah.
So like from an investigator standpoint, you got to understand what kind of gang you're targeting to understand the operations. Like a street gang doesn't have the hierarchy like you would in a prison gang, like a FAMA, a Texas syndicate. They have a hierarchy, or
Yeah.
Barrio Azteca. But on a street gang, they don't have that. But what they have is typically the boldest member is in charge of that gang. And that's where like the confusion sometimes comes, because it'll be a young person telling older guys what to do. And a lot of people don't understand that. Well, that guy's the most dangerous guy in that gang. So when you're the boldest in those street gangs, that's where you see leadership come in. But like those gangs are very flat, except for maybe there. And then you'll see those hierarchical structures only if they're selling drugs. So you'll see like their source supplies here, gets it here to here, and then you'll see it flatten out. But depending on what type of gang it is, like let's say an OMG, their structure is typically president, vice president, sergeant of arms, treasurer, and the secretary. Like you'll see that in their chapters. So it depends on what you're looking at. And that just matters so much, because that's how you would target it. Because, targeting a gang it's meaningless if you're just getting guys that have no operational value. If I'm making sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That so when I spoke with Joey about this, I asked him, were you going after the shooter or the person who shot or called the shot? And he was like, I was going after everyone. And to me, I was like, well, yeah, definitely, right? You go after the shooter. But wouldn't you want to go after that guy who's calling the shot?
For sure. So I really enjoyed Joey's interview, by the way.
Yeah.
So what I agree with Joe, you're trying to go after everyone, but what happens is, let's say you got a guy, let's just say he's calling a shot, okay? And he's telling a youngster to do a shooting. We pick up the shooter. Is it meaningless? Absolutely not, because someone deserves justice.
Yeah.
However, did you dismantle or did you disrupt? So like Joey's trying to say, he's dismantling.
Yeah.
He's trying to dismantle that cell. So if you pick up the shooter, you're definitely disrupting 100%, and somebody's getting justice done. But it's more about going after the entirety of the entire structure, or you're just going to deal with that problem again. To your point.
Okay. Here's what I want to understand. There's two things I want to understand here is with I might have this wrong. I think it's the Mexican Mafia, right?
Mm-hmm.
What makes the street guys so loyal to these two guys, right? The president and vice president. Because when I think about it, right? I think about like El Chapo, right? Like if I was a part of that, like he's done. Like he's never going to see the street again. Like how much loyal what causes like a person be so loyal and to take orders from somebody who's never going to see the street again? Like,
because if you're a street guy and you're making moves on the street, you got to anticipate you will end up in jail. And guess who's in that jail? So, loyalty, if that's what group you're with, and let's say, Texas Mexican Mafia and a Texas Mexican Mafia guy's in prison, he's telling you to do something, and that's already your people. You have to anticipate you're going to end up in that jail, and you're going to end up with him sooner or later because you're making moves on the street. So that's why they have that loyalty. A lot of the FAMA gangs, or your big Texas gangs like Aryan Brotherhood, Aryan Circle, they have an outdoor set. It isn't just an inside prison thing. It's also an outside prison thing. Tango Blast is the biggest gang in Texas, biggest gang in Dallas.
Okay.
They're kind of the opposite of that. They don't have like a structure set up on the outside, and that's why they're not a security threat group inside jail. So like the reason Tango Blast can grow so quickly and they're so big is because the other big Hispanic cliques, they're all segregated because they're a security threat group. So like if you come in and you're PRM, Barrio Azteca, HPL, any of these big gangs, what's going to happen is the gang intelligence guys in the jail are going to pull you and segregate you. So you're not going to have a chance to recruit on those yards. But Tango Blast is not a security threat group. So you can come in prison and they're going to recruit you. And Tango Blast runs the prison because they're so big.
Okay. So they're specifically just a prison gang. They don't have any street like members.
Tango Blast?
Yeah.
Well, when they come out, they're still Tango Blast guys for sure.
Okay.
But they don't have a structure set up where, like Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, you're in prison, you're Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, you come out, they expect you to send money back to their command structure inside prison, to the Aryan Brotherhood guys. They expect you to go to church, like their meetings is what they call that. Okay. So like you have responsibilities and duties outside of prison. Tango Blast doesn't have that.
Okay.
They have in prison, they have a speaker that speaks for all of them type of deal. But it kind of reminds me of, don't get crazy, but like a little democracy among men in there when it comes to Tango Blast. But when they're out, they don't have like the responsibilities. Of course, they got their homeboys still in there, probably take care of them. But they're not required to pay dues to their command structure or anything like that.
And what was I going to ask about this? That's what I was going to ask. In a prison, like Mexican Mafia or Texas Syndicate, now are they both like members? Can you find both members in the same prison, or is it specifically like one prison that you have? This is just a prison of Mexican Mafia, or
no,
segregated or mixed up.
They're in all different types of prisons, or all different prison facilities, but they're going to seg them up. They're going to segregate them because I mean, if you don't, you're going to have violence on the yard. You're going to have violence in the cells. You know, violence. It's just going to cause more violence if those guys aren't segregated up.
Okay. And now this going back to this dismantling thing, how do you what do you target? What is the specific thing that could dismantle like a group like this? Are you targeting the money? Are you targeting the people in power? Like, what is the target, I guess?
So being in a gang is not illegal. Okay. So it's your First Amendment right. You know, you got assembly, association, your First Amendment right. So you're being in a gang is not illegal at all.
Okay.
It's the behavior. So you have to key on the behavior. So and gangs, it's not just about drugs. They'll do anything that'll make them money. So there's a big gang called Rolling 60 Crips. They're huge in the credit card fraud. They'll do the stamps, the embossers, make fake chips or whatever. So you target the behavior, and then you go after if they have a leadership structure. Obviously, you hit that, and you definitely target the money, because if you make it to where they're not making money from it, they're going to stop. And then you go, you know, if they're making a ton of money, and you know, let's just stick with the financial crime example, and they're buying assets, then you go after the assets as well. If it's proceeds from a crime, you target the assets as well. You're trying to deter whatever is going on, whatever crime they're focused on. At the same time, you're trying to do multiple things at the same time. Target leadership, target money, target assets.
Yeah. Okay. And what happens with those assets? What happens with the money?
Well, it goes to court, goes to civil court, and they'll have civil trials over it. The government typically has to prove that this is proceeds from drug sales.
Yeah.
And then it goes into like the city, like for me, it disappears to me. I have no idea what happens, or see anything after the fact, after it goes to trial. So,
going back to these Aryan Brotherhoods, like, were you like undercover, or how did you get?
No,
what were you doing?
No, I wasn't undercover. What we were doing was, we work informants. We have undercovers, and you just ingratiate yourself into certain groups, and without going into too much operational stuff.
Yeah.
You just get in those groups and you start disrupting. And the first piece of that is just building intelligence. Who's doing what where, right?
Mm.
And that's a really hard part. That's typically the hardest part. Who's doing what?
Yeah.
And IDing them. The rest is essentially paperwork. We'll figure it out and get things moving once we figure out who they are, though.
Yeah.
So,
and with the Aryan groups, how secretive are they with like their members? Like who's in charge? Is it, because I'm thinking about like motorcycle gangs, right?
Mhm.
Those people are kind of like hard to find out who's in charge, isn't it?
I think motorcycle gangs are very unique because they act like a gang. Okay, it's not fun to be in a gang unless everyone knows, right? So I wear my cut, I wear my soft colors or whatever.
Yeah.
But they operate more like a criminal syndicate. And what I mean by that is they insulate their core criminal group. Okay, so I may encounter a member of an OMG, whether, Bandidos, Mongols, Pagans, whatever group. And this person may never been in trouble in his life. Okay. Maybe a vet, maybe like from all accounts, like a normal guy, family guy or whatever. That guy's insulation to the core criminal group. And once you see behind the curtain and understand it, it operates kind of like, to me, like the Italians do, where they'll put guys up and like, oh, this guy's in charge. That guy's really not in charge, but they use him like a lightning rod, right? So if federal government comes in looking for somebody, oh, that's the guy in charge, everybody say, they'll go after that guy.
Yeah.
So they insulate their core criminal groups.
Huh. Yeah, you said that before. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So they have fall guys.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, it's interesting talking to those guys because sometimes I'll talk to them and a lot of people think like gang investigator to gang member is always adversarial.
Yeah.
It's hardly ever. Can it turn that way? Absolutely. But it's usually just a conversation. A good gang investigator wants to build rapport and wants to solve a problem before a problem happens. And we call it like, there's a great book called Left of Bang. And it's the Marine Corps Hunter program. And it's basically about being proactive and stopping the bang, okay, and getting ahead of it. So that's what a good gang investigator does. So I'll give you an example, when I became a police officer, there was Bandidos owned Texas. There was no other 1%er clubs.
Okay.
And that would be, it would, at that time, it would be wild to hear a 1%er club coming in because Bandidos would run them out. Mm-hmm. Well, as of lately, we have, Mongols here, we got Pagans here, Vagos here. So all these 1%er clubs are now coming into Texas. And it's basically changed that dynamic so much. But, talking to these guys, they have different personalities as groups. Okay. So Mongols came in and had a big party and we're out there, talking to them. And I stopped this Mongol from Southern California kind of guy. Been in the game a long time, been in the game longer than me. He's looking at me like I'm the youngster. And I'm explaining why we're stopping him. And I'm saying, hey, we want to keep the peace between you and the Bandidos, because Bandidos rolling around here. And I'm sure they're not too happy you guys are here. And he says to me, he goes, man, we're the Mongols and you're the police. He goes, I would think that if you weren't stopping us, you guys weren't good cops.
Yeah.
So it's interesting where, like you were talking about earlier, where there's a huge amount of misconceptions from like movies and TV shows on how this really works.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I find that stopping gang members and talking to them rarely is adversarial. It's honestly me trying to build rapport and just get them to know me, because if something happens in the future, I want them to be able, hey, this is what happened. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys that I would consider more of like a hustler gang member, they just want to make money. they don't want problems either. It's kind of like Joey was saying, they don't want shootings on the street, because what happens when violent crime happens? Well, the police are coming right behind it, because we got to stop the violence. So if he's running that drug business on that street, it's just bad for business, because we're going to be up and down the street all day. He's going to ruin your business. So that relationship is definitely a misconception.
Okay. And now they were dominant at one time, Banditos.
In Texas?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How is like the operations like now? Or
They're still the biggest group here. With all these 1%ers coming in, we worry about violence, of course. You know, it's just something we need to stay ahead of. And when they have events and stuff like that, it's not going to be a surprise to those guys. Like, we're showing up just to keep the peace, and our goal isn't, to start locking everybody up. It's just to be a deterrent.
yeah.
Like I said, it's not illegal to be in a gang. Behavior is illegal. So, but just I was saying earlier about left to bang, we got to prevent the violence. So,
Yeah. And like in your book, you mentioned how like you have to be able to spot all the signs, like the tattoos, you catalog all these things, but you cannot assume.
Yep.
And you cannot like just the way that they're dressed.
Yep.
But at the same time, you cannot miss those signs.
Yeah.
And that's like a very like thin line. It's like, man, like you can get in trouble.
Yep.
And then you can get in trouble.
Yeah. What gives us the authority as law enforcement to document somebody in a gang is in the penal code, and it's in the code of criminal procedure. And an officer just can't come out and say, hey, this guy's a gang member. Okay. You can't just say that. So you have to fit certain criteria that the state is telling us we have to fulfill. So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the ABT guy, Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. I stop a guy today, and he has Aryan Brotherhood of Texas on his forehead tattooed, right? I can't just say, oh, he's Aryan Brotherhood of Texas.
Yeah.
Because the law won't allow me. I have to corroborate it with another criteria. So now typically, like, your older gang members are proud. So like if you stop somebody that is Barrio Azteca, he's probably going to be proud of it. And he's just going to say, quite frankly, are you with Barrio Azteca? Yeah. Okay. That's me corroborating it. He's self-admitted. He's a member of this criminal organization.
Okay.
And then he has the 21 tattooed on. Okay, cool. I got both my little criterias. Now, by law, I'm allowed to document him as a gang member. So the reason I use so much caution in the book is because people sometimes confuse culture with gangs. So like, just because somebody has a bandana on, like a blue bandana hanging out their pocket, does not mean they're a Crip, right? That would be ridiculous. But if you go encounter that person, and let's say they're at a known gang location for the Rolling 60 Crips with another Rolling 60 Crip, and he's got a flag flying, it is what it is. That's what it is,
Yeah.
So I know in the book I use so much caution there because I wrote it for, someone that has zero knowledge about gangs kind of just walking in.
Yeah.
And that sometimes becomes a confusing point because a lot of tattoos can be ambiguous. Okay. So I can walk up and see a tat that in another world that's a gang tat, but in this world, not necessarily. So like bloods are 5-point stars. Okay. Crips are 6-point stars. So not everybody that has a 5-point star tattoo is a blood gang member, right?
Yeah.
So that's why those criteria exist. And that's why you got to be cautious in what you're looking at and interview and build that rapport and really know where you're at and who are they with, what are they doing. All those things come into play. Who your dad is, that comes into play. Even your name, like there's a lot of gang members that name their sons after gang names like Damu. Damu is a blood gang member or is a name for a blood gang member.
Oh, okay.
So like Swahili, if you start hearing that Swahili stuff, that's all bloods. Su, Damu, those are all like typical blood terms. So like if I stop a guy and his name is Damu and he's in a blood neighborhood, I will ask him, who's your dad? You know, and I'm getting older to the point that I may know his dad now. I know his son. You know?
Yeah.
Generational gang members is a real thing. Just like how, my dad was in the military, his dad was in the military. It kind of became a generational thing. The same thing happens with gang members.
It's interesting. I when I was talking about Joey, that was one thing I couldn't understand too much is like, okay, but how do you know? He's like, well, I get corroboration from this guy and this guy. And I was like, but those are people telling you things. Like, to me, I was like, but these are just like, but it's not solid. I would imagine you need something hard, some hard proof.
Yeah. I think the state does a good job. I really do.
Yeah.
And even with the state, your typical gang investigator is very conservative on documentation because you're signing your name saying, yeah, this guy's a gang member, and that's going to affect him. That may cause his arrest in the future.
Yeah.
For a weapons violation or what have you, or enhanced sentencing. So, like I say in the book, I'm very cautious in doing it. Now, obviously, if you got the criteria to do it, is what I would tell a young officer. But the cooperation points, 99% of the time, a gang member is going to tell you, yeah, I'm a member of this, because they're proud of it, or they'll have a tattoo of the exact gang name across them, or like your big FAMA groups, Mexican Mafia, they have a shield, right? It's like a burning sun and a two-headed serpent and the two swords crossing in the background. That's their shield. Aryan Brotherhood of Texas has a shield. Aryan Circle, they have a diamond. They call it the diamond. So they have like an unambiguous tat right there,
Yeah.
So it's not even worth hiding if they have it. Because if you're trained and you know what you're looking at, and you look at somebody's tattoos and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, man, you got the shield on you. What are you talking about? So majority of the time, they'll come off of it, and they're proud of their gang. So, and I was teaching a class to a group of civilians, and it was about an area that they were building businesses in. It was kind of like a neighborhood kind of thing. And this lady asked me, she goes, why would a gang member tattoo his gang on him for the police to just know he's a gang member? And I had to explain, it's not for me. It's for other gang members. Right? They don't care about the police knowing they're a gang member. They care about other gang members knowing they're gang members, right? For protection.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll see that and hear them like, yeah, I'm with this group,
What, so as like, from your experience, who are the most sophisticated, would you say, like, most difficult to track, most difficult to catalog?
Oof.
Because you write those hybrid gangs, like, they have different, ethnicities and stuff like that, and there's no hierarchy, and it's just,
yeah.
how do you even like identify something?
Well, the hybrids are a new generational thing. When I first started working gangs, a hybrid was considered, you had male and females in that gang. Now that definition has changed. So what you'll see is they'll use like symbols and signs from this gang and this gang and this gang, and they'll call themselves, renegades or whatever. But they will have some kind of common thing associated with all of them. And that's probably their gang name or what have you. They're hard to stay. If you're not on top of it, they can get away real quick, as in like your intelligence on them. If you're on top of it, you're on top of it. You know the members. But if you're not out there daily gathering intel, talking to them, talking to people they're associating with, and just being in that neighborhood or wherever they are, you're going to lose them real quick. This generation is a lot different, where the older generations, like the Rolling 60 Crip example, if a guy was a Rolling 60 Crip when he was 14 years old, he's going to be a Rolling 60 Crip when he's 40. He's not jumping around. Okay. Well, nowadays, guys are jumping so quick. I'm with this group. Cool. Document them. All right. And then 3 months later, he's at odds with all these guys and he jumped over here and now he's doing crimes with these guys.
Oh man.
So, and I think it's really a generational thing because the OMGs are the same, like one of the first groups that came into Texas, other than Bandidos, was a group called Kinfolk. And that was a break off from Bandidos. A bunch of Bandidos became Kinfolk. Well, I've encountered guys that were Bandidos, Kinfolk, and now have moved into a new gang called Brothers East or Beast. So like they're moving too. But the older generation of gang investigator, when I talk to them about things like this, they're like, man, we never saw things like that. If you were this, you were this, only with this generation in the last 5-10 years, we're seeing a lot of movement like that. And I think it really goes back to MOE, money over everything. And if I'm making money over here, I'm going over there type of deal. I don't think the younger generation likes anybody telling them what to do, period.
Yeah.
One way we kind of try to get peace, if there's ongoing shootings or something, or ongoing conflict, we'll talk to the older guys and we'll say to the older guys, hey, talk to the youngsters, man, get them under control. Like they're blowing the block up. And they're like, man, they don't listen to us either, so that's just a new generational thing we're dealing with.
With these like confidential informants, and they're giving you like info, like what's in it for them? Like, is there immunity or are they still?
It depends on the agreement.
Okay.
There's some guys that come forward out of civic duty and they don't get paid. They don't work off a case. They're just tired, or someone in their family was victimized by this group and they're tired of it.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, surprisingly. Is there people get paid? Absolutely. Is there people working off cases? For sure. But it's an agreement. And it's usually, very, very detailed agreement. Like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is, what we can come together on and maybe work some things out,
Because they can't get out of that gang, right? Like
it getting out of a gang.
Yeah, like the motorcycle gangs or like.
Oh, no, you can get out. They may put you out bad, but there's some gangs you can't get out of, like your big famas, like Mexican Mafia, Texas Syndicate. That it ain't happening. Now there's other gangs like, MS-13. Oddly enough, if you become a Christian and you're going to church, in numerous interviews I've heard this. If you become a Christian, you're going to church and you're taking it serious, they'll let you go. And that's the first time I ever heard that from out of a gang. But conducting numerous interviews, that seems to be true.
Huh. And you've interviewed some of those guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And isn't it like done like now since the president put away so many of those guys?
There's still MS out there. Now, are they anything like they were before here? No. We've seen a decline in MS-13 for a while, but the thing is, they are understanding American law enforcement now. They're not getting the tattoos like they used to. They're not, conducting themselves in the same way. They understand what's going on in America. Like the new groups coming in, like TDA, that's all over the news, been big for a while. All these different, groups coming in, you see them struggling with American law enforcement because they're not so used to such a robust law enforcement from their countries.
Yeah.
Because, you got to think about how many different police departments are just in San Antonio alone.
Right.
How many operational guys are out there? It's just layers upon layers upon layers. And so with that robust law enforcement, they're not used to that for sure.
What's TDA?
Tren de Agua. It's the organized crime from Venezuela.
Oh, wow.
and they're now, considered a terrorist organization.
Oh, okay. How do you feel about that? The war on the cartels. Think it's going to be good for us, or because I mean we are the biggest buyers of everything illicit that they have, and
Yeah, I think like TDA. A lot of people think there's this kind of a misconception that it's just a prison gang. It wasn't. So in Venezuela, um, Hu- uh, Hugo Chavez, he tried to do a coup d'état in Venezuela. He fails, goes to jail, spends a few years in jail, comes out, and then gets elected president. Well, he became president and he started all these socialist programs and building um, you know, a big train, trains through Nicaragua. So what happened was, with all these new programs, these men came in and started victimizing and demanding protection fees for the trains moving through
hmm,
the Aragua, which is a state in Venezuela.
yeah,
So, and then that leadership went to prison, and then they really built out their numbers. So, on the news, you'll hear, "Oh, that's a prison gang." Yeah, sure. Yeah, a lot of them were recruited in prison, but that started way before. It's essentially like their criminal syndicate of that country,
hmm,
Um, but it is a misconception to just say they're a prison gang. They were doing these scams in Aragua before they went to prison.
oh, okay,
But to answer your question, um, it's hard to tell. My scope is on the ground,
hmm,
but a lot of gangs are essentially cartel proxies,
yeah,
and they're like gangs in Texas are very unique because of the relationship with the border.
okay,
So basically, gangs in the U.S. are the sales force of your cartels, because how else are you going to offload your dope?
yeah,
So they bring in the dope. The gangs, they have, they they're not they got papers. They understand American law enforcement. They have the networks already built in, and that's why you have that close relationship.
hmm,
And then, like in El Paso, or like Barrio Azteca. Barrio Azteca is El Paso, started in El Paso. They're a prison gang. But Barrio Azteca, as soon as they go into Mexico, they're not Barrio Azteca, they're Azteca. And they had this really, really close relationship with the Juarez cartel. This is a little history.
hmm,
And then with the La Lina cartel. And it really, that one gang really shows like the the closeness between gangs in Texas and the cartels.
huh.
But there's several gangs like this. Your big farmers are just like that. They have these close relationships with cartels.
Now, and as I understood, these gangs can't go into Mexico.
No, no, like,
Oh, they can.
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And they do. Like, there's an old case where Barrio Azteca, they went into Mexico and they killed, I believe, 3 people related to the U.S. consulate,
Oh, wow.
and they got picked up on that. I believe they killed two members, two members working for the government, and then I believe a family member of one. Um, but they'll go in, commit crimes in Mexico, come back in El Paso, and it's like a little safe haven. So like, even cartels, they used to be where there's a lot of violence on the other side of the border in Juarez, and then they do their violence over here, come back in El Paso, okay, everything's chill. So it's kind of like a
Mm,
little safe haven, and you get away from the violence in Mexico.
wow. Um, you mentioned that also in your book about like identifying these gangs because then if you don't do anything,
Mhm.
the public loses trust and then the neighborhoods become unsafe. And then you have this, and it instantly reminded me of like, well, that's kind of what's been going on in Mexico for like a long time.
Yeah.
Like on the border towns, like people are like scared of going out at night and a lot of them are extorted businesses, things like that.
Yeah. So if, as a example, if I'm a police officer and I see that this gang is controlling the neighborhood and folks don't want their kids outside playing, right? And they see me there, I'm not doing anything about it. It appears that you are either A, complicit, or B, don't care about us, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's why you strap on a badge, that's your duty. It gets rough and it's hard, but that's what you gotta do. So that's the point I was trying to make, where if it's not addressed and it's not being handled, the community, if I was in that community, I would look at it like, um, the officers aren't handling this problem. Either A, they're complicit, or B, they don't care, which is a horrible place to be, especially where you're scared to have your kids in your front yard.
Yeah.
Because the gang members keep shooting up the hood,
Like, after this whole Iran thing, when we dropped those bombs, like, it seemed like a lot of people were like kind of scared. Do you think like these cartels will still try to like operate, like still try to bring like drugs in and stuff, even though we're like bombing these boats?
Absolutely. I won't say absolutely. I think they'll find different ways. I think they're going to be extremely cautious,
Yeah.
for sure. But the answer is not to do nothing, for sure.
Mhm.
You got to do something. And looking, everything looks clearer through the bottle of hindsight. So I trust that. We have enough information on what's going on to be effective, but the last thing I would want is like a cartel like CJNG being looked at as freedom fighters.
Oh, okay.
So like if we do, and this, just if we did overt military action and it hurt innocents, that's how some people will view them, as freedom fighters now, instead of what they really are, which is a drug cartel.
What is it that that you're seeing like in the last couple of years more of from these cartels? Because we like hear a lot of stuff, right?
Mm.
Like cocaine, and then now fentanyl, and then trafficking, like people. We find a lot of these like people in like containers and stuff.
Yeah, so we're living through a huge change, and it's from cultivated dope to synthetic. So, the name of the game was all your cultivated, your marijuana, your cocaine, your poppy. And then now we're shifting into this synthetic realm where everything's essentially fentanyl. I never saw fentanyl up until 4 years ago, but now every stop that has drugs on it, there's fentanyl there typically. So that's how big the problem is with fentanyl.
Jeez. And it's crazy because like you think about like the problems we have with gangs like in America,
Mhm.
but compared to like some other countries, like some other countries are like ran by gangs. Like
Yeah.
Russia, like there's cities that are like operated by this gang, this gang.
Mm.
And then like recently I heard about some places in Myanmar that are like controlled by like gangs. They have like trafficking operations and like slave operations where they like offer people jobs and it seems legitimate, but they're like slaves. So like meant to scam all day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. Like, there's a lot of criticism that comes to, to the US, but working daily, we have, like I, kind of said earlier, our law enforcement is so robust that if a group gets that big and that dangerous, all these different agencies will put whatever problems they have aside and work together to stop it. A lot of those, like in Mexico, a lot of people don't understand where all those like weapons come from, like grenades and rocket launchers and all this stuff. That's all leakage from Latin American countries. So like Venezuela, their military, Peru, all those heavy weapons like that are coming out of those countries, and their leakage from those militaries now, like, of course, rifles, handguns, things like that, they're coming up in Texas, buying them and taking them down to Mexico. And that's pretty well documented. There's a bunch of books on that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite authors talks about that. But, you know, these other countries, they don't have that big law enforcement to come combat those groups. And the groups you're talking about are essentially warlords, you know? Kind of how I see them.
Yeah, because in Mexico, they have like one gun store in Mexico City.
Yep.
And
Just
then,
one.
and then they like get people like in America to just like buy guns and take them down there.
Yeah. Yeah. We call that a straw purchaser.
Straw purchaser.
Yeah. So if I'm prohibited from buying a gun,
Yeah.
then I'll go find somebody who is not prohibited, pay them a little extra money, and then they'll purchase a gun for me and give it to me. That's how they acquire those guns. They use straw purchasers.
How easy is it to get that stuff down there? Like the walk in?
Yeah. You know, I think ATF does a good job of trying to combat that stuff. And I'm not sure how much of it actually goes on. Personally, I never was investigating straw purchasers, but I know if we encounter it, that's who we call and we let them know what's going on.
Yeah. So with the activity that's going on, like with these cartels, like with you working with gangs, and how do you know when you like find a gang? How do you identify that? Like, oh, this is a proxy, or this is they're working with a cartel.
If you were working a gang and they're a drug organization and they're selling drugs or whatever, you start working them and you can layer up pretty quickly on figuring out who's their source of supply. You know, you go up the chain and then you figure out where it's coming from. And that's how you get to that big source of supply.
Yeah, because you write about something called gaps. Oh, and blind spots.
Intelligence gaps, yeah.
Yeah. And I would think, man, how would you, I mean, you got to turn somebody, you got to, because you're trying to get the full scope, the full picture, right?
Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways, but it's gathering intel or intelligence. There's human intelligence, like you're talking about flipping somebody. Flipping someone inside the organization is always the easiest. And then working from there, you know, ingratiating undercover, go from there. You know, there's different ways to work those kind of groups. I don't want to go too operational.
Okay. Yeah.
But you know, there's guys that are masters at that craft. I'm more of your street guy, building the intel and giving it. But they're really good at what they do for sure.
One of the other things I was going to ask you is that how do you, because I know that you've heard of like how drug dealers will purchase their drugs from the black market and then start selling. If a person is doing that, in the way that I think about it, I was like, well, they can just sell and they're good. How would, like, would the big families, how would they know? Like, how do they know that because isn't the source of like the drugs coming from Mexico?
Yeah, typically.
Yeah, now you have one guy who's getting a source from somewhere else. How do they identify that?
You mean like identify who's plugged or who's the plug, you know?
Yeah, because the way I understand it, like you can't just like sell or set up shop at a block that's owned by like or ran by like a Mexican mafia or something.
For sure. If a gang's controlling a neighborhood, they're not going to let anybody just show up and start selling drugs, especially if they're into selling drugs themselves, which there's so much crossover between, drug trafficking and gangs, right? Yeah. So, they'll probably go out there, extort them, talk to them. It wouldn't be something that would happen because if you're showing up to a neighborhood and it's ran by Rolling 60 Crips and, it's just like real estate, location, location, location.
Yeah.
So you got a great location and you got a bunch of cars going and, going, coming. And this is just a street kind of trafficking situation that it typically wouldn't happen
Oh,
because
okay.
everyone knows who controls those blocks. Now, that day and age of like guys standing on the corner hustling,
Mhm.
it still happens, but it's more everyone's hustling off the phone, hustling off Instagram.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yes.
talk about that.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, drug traffickers utilizing Instagram as their advertising for their drug operation, and will even list their prices and their products, and then they'll hit them on Messenger. Oh yeah, and hook up that way. So it's not like guys are working the block. That still happens, but not as much as when I first became an officer. That was every day, like multiple guys on the block. But with social media, changed that, um, changed that a lot. But like most guys hustle off the phone, meaning like they'll have their established customers, or those customers will give phone numbers to other customers, and then that's how they get in contact with them.
When I thought about that, I was like, man, that is so crazy because that is done over the phone.
Mhm.
Like you think back to like the Italian mobs where they didn't talk on the phone and like people, and now you have like evidence, right? You can track, like, okay, look, you have your whole menu right here.
Yep.
That seems so crazy to me. Why they would do that? Like use TikTok or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, I think they anticipate nobody's paying attention, or like, they're making so much money, they know they're going to eventually go to jail sometime. So they, you know, some guys, jail isn't a deterrent. It really isn't. So they're going to make their money and they're going to deal with the consequences later. And that's just how they move.
Yeah. Have you had to deal with cases like that where you're like, okay, look, this is all the evidence from your phone. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I've never went to trial on something like that. If it's all in the phone, they typically just give it up and take a plea and keep it moving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Man, that seems so crazy. What, I guess, what undercover stuff have you done that you could talk about?
I wasn't an undercover guy.
Oh,
Like I was in an undercover unit, but I wasn't the guy. So I don't want to portray myself as something I wasn't. I wasn't like that guy,
okay.
slipping into organizations or anything like that.
What about this task force? I read like something that you were on like some FBI task force.
Um,
Did I read it right?
yeah, I don't want to go into that part.
That's fine. It's fine. But so going back to the gang stuff, with these cartels, what do you think, like, down the line? Is this still gonna be like an issue? Do you think that we could like eradicate it completely as far as like the Mexican side?
It's so hard to say. I think there's a lot that can be done, but to your point, it's so lucrative to bring drugs here.
Yeah.
I think treating that side of the problem as well would be great. Now, I don't. There's no easy answer here, truly, because I run into drug addicts daily, and they're just because you're a drug addict doesn't mean you're a bad person,
Right.
right? And my heart goes out to them a lot of times because a lot of stories I hear is somebody gets hurt, like a broken collarbone, broken shoulder, hurt back, and then become addicted to their medication.
Oh, that's right.
And then the medication is expensive, and then they move into other opioids,
Yeah.
like the fentanyl. So I've heard that story time and time again. I really have. And in those situations, you're like, man, that could have been me, because this person just hurt themselves, got in a car accident, had to use this medication to move around, and then become addicted to it.
Yeah.
So I think treating that side of the problem would help a lot. I don't think the problem will ever go away per se.
Okay.
And just being a realist, because people, people are people, and people have vices, and it if if you have um, if you have that addiction, is so hard to fight. Like I've encountered so many people that have been through rehab and rehab and rehab, and they're really trying. Like people take away sometimes when people go rehab then relapse. They're trying. They really are. That's why I said my heart goes out to them, because I've seen people try to fight the addiction and they just can't get away from it.
Yeah. And that's where all the crimes come from when they need to.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, like your addicts, they're not doing violent crimes. They're doing like burglaries of your vehicle, um, theft, things like that. Can they do violent crimes? Sure. But like your typical addict is not out there doing carjackings, or doing armed robberies at banks,
Yeah.
Does that person probably use drugs? Sure. But your typical addicts, aren't doing that.
What do you think about, like, I've had this conversation with a friend, like, why don't they just make a lot of these drugs legal? Like Portland and like some of these more, wouldn't that solve the issue? I mean, but still, if you look at that, if you look at Portland and stuff, it's kind of bad. People smoking crack on the street and
Yeah.
families walking by.
Yeah. I wish I had the answer. Legalizing, it seems like we have, that never ending war on drugs, right? And I can see that too. But just because you're losing doesn't mean you stop fighting.
Yeah.
These drugs do victimize person after person after person, especially fentanyl. The people are overdosing on fentanyl at a rate that's insane. And, that old, probably when we were a lot younger, that old like commercial with marijuana, like you'll be an addict after one.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's ridiculous, right? But now it's a real concern, like if you're a young kid at a party and you get, what you think is ecstasy for the first time, that's going to be laced with fentanyl now. And that could overdose you immediately, So those things are real. People say that all the time, and about, how quickly like these little, just try it once type of deal and nothing will happen. Fentanyl is a different game. It really, really is.
Okay, all right, so they're not just taking it just by itself, it's in the other drugs.
Yeah, it's in everything.
Wow.
So like even, say you get on the street, somebody buys Xanax, okay, and they look like Xanax, and they're saying, oh, those are Xannies. It's probably cut with fentanyl. It's probably fentanyl in there. It's probably not real Xanax. It's probably somebody making that in a lab in their house with fentanyl in it.
What?
So like you have no idea what's really in that.
Yeah. Is that what you're seeing when on these arrests that you make and stuff? It's
Absolutely.
I want to go back to that whole Aryan Brotherhood thing, but I wanted to ask also. You keep mentioning like Rolling 60 Crips. Is that a Texas like based gang? Or?
Yeah, it's a big Crip gang in Dallas.
Oh, okay. So in Dallas, there's a bunch of these gangs, or like you have Aryan and Black, and then
yeah, we got tons of gangs in Dallas. We have documented so many gangs over the years. Now, gangs that are still operating is a different story. We got probably just operationally that we routinely are hearing probably between 30 and 40 that we hear often, but that includes all your prison gangs. So like your prison gangs aren't geographically bound, right?
Okay.
They happen in prison.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So like when they come out of prison, you can encounter them anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So like if I was training a young gang investigator, the first thing we're going to do is learn about prison gangs, because I can take you to anywhere and we may encounter one, right? Now, a street gang typically runs a block. Like another big gang in Dallas is Eastside Homeboys.
Okay.
Eastside Homeboys is from Eastside Avenue, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, we want to encounter Eastside, we just go to Eastside Avenue, So that's the big difference there. just like transnational gangs are the same way. You gotta have kind of an idea of what you're looking for and have an understanding of that gang, a little history on that gang. Like 18th Street, we're looking for 18th Street. You can encounter them anywhere because they're not geographically bound.
What transnational? What is that?
Transnational gang, just a gang that's operational outside the country and inside the country.
Oh wow! So like those cartel ones, then? Right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Trump, the administration designated 6 cartels as foreign terrorist organizations now, along with 2 gangs, MS-13 and TDA.
TD. Oh, that's the
Trindagua.
Oh wow. And so yeah, there's a lot of gangs in Dallas that so is it typically you see a lot of violence like because of all these gangs, or I mean that's a lot.
Yeah, but every gang is dangerous.
Okay.
So like I've been asked before, what's the most dangerous gang? Well, they're all dangerous. Okay. They all have the capacity to be very dangerous. The gangs that are more about clout, more about making, their name known, they're more violent. My experience is the younger ones are always more violent because they're so reckless. They don't care. The older gang guys, they probably have a family, probably have kids. They want to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and they kind of like grew out of the pettiness of not making money.
Yeah.
Right. So if it doesn't make money, your older gang guys are 25, 30, 35, 40. Those guys are typically about money. Anybody below that, those are the most dangerous because they're so reckless and they want to prove themselves and they don't want to listen to anybody. And with the proliferation of like machine gun conversion devices, it's just gotten worse and worse with those youngsters.
Machine gun conversion?
Yeah, it's like an apparatus they put on a handgun that makes it fully auto. So
Oh,
semi-auto.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And that's illegal?
Yeah. That? Oh, yes, really. So everyone calls it a switch. But what it is it's a device or an apparatus you put on a handgun that, let's say you have a mag of 40 rounds, right? And they'll get the big mags, put it on, you pull the trigger once, it's going to unload that whole mag. So like, it's just, like a semi-auto, you pull the trigger once, one bullet goes out, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you install that switch, pull the trigger once, it's dumping the whole mag. So like, it causes so much destruction.
Yeah.
And, when I was a young gang cop, we'll go to a shooting, you'll see, 10 rounds fired, shell casings out there. Now it is not uncommon to go to a scene and see 50, 100 rounds fired.
Oh, wow.
And they're running with switches. So it's just a different level of like volume of fire and violence when it comes to those switches. That's why they're so
crazy.
Yeah.
It seems like they're so they're more prone to like just shooting people with those.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like when they have those switches, people that are completely nothing to do with whatever's going on just inadvertently get rounds put to their houses, to their cars, hit people. It's just so reckless. There's not like a better word to use when you're using those switches.
Jeez. There's something I was going to ask you about. Oh, I have my notes here. But you were telling me about you were like working on something else, like that was just to deal with the cartels.
Yeah, I'm working on.
You don't have to tell me like a bunch of stuff, but just
no. I love talking about it. I'm working on another book called Convergence, and it's basically documenting how gangs, cartels, or organized crime, whatever you like to call them, and terrorism is kind of converging together, where their goals aren't typically the same, but they are now like using each other operationally. So like, there's a case that happened where I believe it was Hezbollah attempted to hire Hell's Angels to kill an Iranian dissident in the U.S. or in Canada. And it just shows that convergence of like these terrorists can say, I am essentially not involved, right? Because, it was a gang that, killed these folks, but they can pay them and the gang just wants the money, right? So it's how these groups are kind of like working together. And my opinion is we silo all these different things. Like, okay, this is a gang, this is cartel, this is terrorists, and those silos are slowly going away because now operationally they're all working together. Where I've encountered gang members who have said things about what this terrorist group has used, right? And how like right now, what's going on in Ukraine with drone technology and all that stuff, the cartels are already using it. They're using it. They're dropping grenades using drones, and that is going to blow into the U.S. I don't think, again, like we have such a robust system. I don't think it's going to be like that. But definitely the same tactics are being utilized across all three spectrums.
Man, that is so interesting to think about, right? Because typically terrorist groups are not dealing in making money, right?
Right.
Causing mayhem and
ideology.
Yeah, ideology.
So to back this thing up to kind of where my interest really stemmed from is, you ever heard of Stasi?
No.
Okay. So I probably pronouncing it wrong. It's a German word. It's the East German secret police. Okay. So, and they were trained by the KGB. And when the wall fell, all these essential, spies, if you will, that were trained by the KGB were out of a job. So what happened was not all of them, some of them went and worked for the Colombian cartels, okay, and how to smuggle drugs. So then they started working with the Mexican cartels. And there's a really good movie called Collateral. Do you remember?
Sounds familiar.
It has like Tom Cruise in it. He's a hitman running around. Okay. There's a quick line in that movie that was really cool. These cops and agents are watching this camera of this cartel club, okay? And they're talking about this hitman that's coming to town, and he's trying to basically kill witnesses off a list. And one of them says it real quick, and he says, yeah, a lot of these guys are ex-Stasi. And immediately I was like, oh, whoever wrote the script really knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But that's where like essentially foreign adversaries are mixing in with organized crime to affect the U.S. And, to me, it's super interesting. And I've been doing a lot of research on it and getting it together. But hopefully in the next year, I can get that book out.
So has it been going on for a while?
Or they're sharing tactics and tech and stuff like, absolutely. There isn't, there isn't like I'll give you an example. There's different task forces that, let's say, like there used to be a thing called Project Safe Neighborhood. It's actually still going on, where if, let's say, the Rolling 60 Crib, you encounter a Rolling 60 Crib and he has a gun on him, he's a convicted felon, or he has this amount of drugs on him, whatever. That is a person that could be prosecuted federally, okay? Because those are also federal crimes.
Yeah.
And federally, you typically get more time. There's harsher penalties, and it's typically day for day. Okay, so it's not like the state system where
explain this to me.
Yeah, so you can have good time and all this. Well, so that person that's on the corner, felon with a gun, is a good candidate for federal prosecution. Okay, but there's a flip side to this coin. What happens is this guy going to federal prison, and goes over federal prison. Guess who else is in federal prison?
Yeah,
it's like the LinkedIn of the criminal world, where this guy is a street guy, rolling 60 Crip. Now he's meeting a guy from Culiacan in Sinaloa, and they're friends. And then he gets out, and now he has a direct line to this guy. So it kind of worked. There's a flip side of prosecuting those guys federal sometimes. Now, I don't know if a better way, but this is what happens. So they get these relationships in federal prison, and then they learn in federal prison. And there's also, other people in federal prison. They teach them tactics and things like that. Then they come out and they utilize them. So it's like your criminal LinkedIn,
Jeez. Actually, so there's a story that Ed Calderon talks about, and when he arrested like the Mexican stew maker. I don't know if you remember this, but the Mexican stew maker was like 2011, 2000. I could probably get that wrong, but he was just a regular like guy that the cartels came and brought him bodies, and he chopped them up, and he put them in this acid, and he buried them. Right.
Okay.
Well, his claim was that there were 2 Israeli guys that came with the cartels and showed him how to do it. And he didn't, the arresting officer didn't believe him, but then he saw things that he said were like, this is tradecraft. Like somebody showed him how to do it.
It's very, very interesting. Yeah, no, I haven't heard that, but
But it's not far-fetched, isn't it?
yeah, but you got to remember, the guy's a criminal as well. And he's going to say anything to get out of a charge, or get something he needs. Sometimes you got to be real careful interviewing arrestees, because if they're sentencing, let's say their sentencing guidelines are super high, like that guy's obviously was life, right? They're going to say anything to grab your attention, and then try to figure out a way to manipulate the situation to get a better deal. Because they'll promise everything. They'll promise you the world, like, oh, I can get this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Typically, it's all bullshit, And so when a guy like that is doing crimes like that, I wouldn't really take his word, But if he's seen evidence otherwise, it would take a lot to convince me he was telling the truth, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up, because we talked about it before, is this how to spot all these cues, right? Did you pick that up? Did you learn that as you went along as being in law enforcement? Like how to spot, okay, this guy's nervous, like he's fidgety, you can't look me in the eye, like
yeah. And over time you'll start picking up things. My favorite is past tense language. Yeah. So like, let's say you're on your way home from this podcast right now, right?
Yeah.
And you get stopped by the police, and you're heading home, and the officer's like, all right, Jesse, where you heading tonight? What would you say?
I'm headed home.
You're headed home, 100%, right? Well, that's when you're riding dirty. A lot of guys say, well, I was going home, because he knows in his mind he's going to jail for something.
Whoa.
Okay. So like, I love past tense language, because it's one of those things that I could tell a person about past tense language, they're still going to do it, because so in their conscious mind, they know they're either riding dirty, they got warrants out, or whatever the case, and they'll say, well, I was going home.
So they say what they're thinking out loud.
Yeah. But it's hard to pick up, but anytime I've encountered that, it's always been the same situation.
Yeah.
Because like how you said, it's the normal way. So I'm heading home, officer. I ain't doing nothing wrong. Yeah, I was speeding or what have you.
Yeah.
But a guy that's doing something dirty, he's got a load with him. He's got a strap on him. He's wanted, whatever. He's going to say, oh, well, I was going home.
Yeah, I brought that up because you're like, if he's saying that stuff, typically it's bullshit. So like, how would you pick up what he's saying is bullshit if you just like, I don't know, that's something he would just say? You kind of like look at him and see how he's saying it, or like,
well, there's a bunch of different techniques, but like the troubling part is a lot of body language and things like that. Like, there's a bunch of good books out there, but if I'm looking, it's easy to manipulate, and conversation matters. So like, let's say I'm just talking to you, and I'm just talking, and we're talking about the Cowboys and the Browns or whatever. I could hit you with a pulsing question. So like, this is done over time. Okay. So like, let's say me and you are talking and we're talking about family, and this could be an interview room. This could be on the side of the street. Doesn't really matter. And we're talking, and I'm just making you relax. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking because I want to keep your mind busy. I don't want you thinking ahead. So I'm talking and I'm talking and I'm talking. And eventually I'm going to hit you with a real question and see how you react. So we're on the side of the street and me and you were talking about the Cowboys game last night, or, my kid, kicked a soccer goal yesterday. It doesn't really matter. Well, then I'll hit you, you got anything in your pockets? And then, right? Just a little question like that. If someone pats their pocket or looks down at their pocket, they got something in their pocket, and it's a pulse. It's not like, it's not all up front.
Yeah.
It's a pulse question because I'll come right back off of it. Let's say if we're in an interview, I mean, we're talking, and then I'll hit you with a question, something, simple. Hey, just where were you that night? No, really, where were you? And then see if you change on me, see what you start giving me. Because the goal is I want you relaxed enough that I can read you quick enough. Okay. And then, body language is interesting, but the one thing that I've always found, I don't know why this is with guys, this is a guy thing. If we're talking and you're concealing, you always hide your feet. They'll wrap it around the bars on the bottom of their stools or the chair.
Yeah.
They'll start wrapping their feet, and they may be looking like, like everything's fine, but they start wrapping their feet, it's something's wrong, but a good conversation usually can lead to like relaxation, and then the pulse question, and then you'll see a change.
And this is something you see all the time.
Wow. But if you're 3-time convicted convict, you're going to have a different.
Pretty nervous.
Well, no, you're going to have a different reaction because you're so used to dealing with me. Right. So if I see a hardened convict, like classified as a hardcore gang member, 3-time convicted felon, he's going to act completely different than a youngster that's only been in jail once or twice. Well, so those guys, I find that if you're just upfront with them, and I'll say something like, "Look, we're the same age. We're both too old for this. You know what you're doing out here. I know what you're doing out here. Let's just get it over with." And typically they
just give it up.
Yeah. But it's a part of like that respect thing too, where if you lack of humility in gangs will get your ass kicked quick. The officer that, if I ever saw an officer going out there just running his mouth, that guy's gonna get his ass kicked. I mean, that's true.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you do talk about that.
Yeah, like respect is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I overgive respect because I expect it back.
Yeah.
And then if I'm talking to somebody who respects themselves, like an OG kind of guy, he's going to recognize that immediately, and we're going to have a good conversation.
Yeah.
But when people think that relationship should be adversarial, that's when you have the issues.
Yeah, that's so crazy that you said, because I do remember like a YouTube video I was like watching where this like escaped convict, like they're actively looking for this guy, and the sheriff rolls up on him and is talking to him for a long time. And he is so calm and so smooth that the sheriff lets him go. He doesn't have anything on him, doesn't have the ID. He's like, "Oh, I'm out for a jog."
Yeah.
Like, really, he just escaped from a prison.
I know the video you're talking about. Over time, especially having so many encounters with people, what normal people usually do. And like, I'm a cop and I get pulled over, I get nervous. I do.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So like, it's not a nervousness thing. It's more than that. And it takes it takes time to mature as like an investigator to see what's going on and to really pay attention to what's being said. Because sometimes in conversation, inadvertently, people will say things and you're like, I didn't mention that at all. But like,
Oh yeah.
I'll give you an example. I stopped a guy. This was a long time ago. I stopped this guy, and he immediately gets out before I can get up there, and he starts pointing to a house, saying there's gun. They got a bunch of guns in there, and I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea what he's talking about, right? And at the end of this encounter, he was trying to divert my attention to something else to assault me. Okay. So like you gotta really be dialed in when dealing with especially gangs.
Yeah.
You gotta be dialed in because these guys learn in prison, what to do with cops, how to handle law enforcement,
Yeah.
like what we can, what we cannot do, and they use that to manipulate the situation.
Jeez. So you just picked up that over time.
Mm-hmm.
You never made any like really rookie mistakes like at the beginning.
Everyone makes mistakes. I've made 1,000 mistakes. And you just learn from them. And, one good thing about, working in a big city is you get a lot of reps really, really quickly. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's typically senior guys that will keep the regulator on, like, okay, don't do that. That's stupid. Don't do that. And, we got some of the best in the profession. I really believe that. And I had such good mentors when I got there, and that I owe everything to, that will teach you. And there's still mentors there that will stop young officers from making huge mistakes, and kind of reel them in.
Yeah. Cause, I also I watch a lot of these body cam videos, and one of them that was crazy like that, like a rookie mistake was the guy left his patrol car unlocked.
Oh no.
And the guy got in, his patrol car took off.
Oh no.
It's like, always leave your patrol car locked.
Yeah, that's wild.
And do you have any like social medias and stuff like where people can reach out to you? Or
So I have a small training company called Sentinel Training Group, and they can get to me at that same sentineltraininggroup.org. There's email on there. If they're looking for the book, it's on Amazon.
Okay. And you got that other one coming out pretty soon?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's really interesting, like to try to like understand all this stuff, because like just going through your book, like it just seems like so tedious, like all these things, like cataloging, clothing, tattoos, and then it's still changing.
Yeah.
Like the other thing that I thought was interesting is slang words. I was like, man, so I just noticed a few new slang words, and that's just like slang, and like, and I've seen interrogation videos where they mention like a slang for a murder, right? And they know, and the kid's saying like, oh, it means help.
Yeah.
So no, it means murder.
Yeah. So kind of the way I talk about that is, in order to understand and study medicine, you have to know the language of medicine. And it's the same thing with gangs. And it's just what you pick up over time, like, what they call this or that. You document it, and that way, and then you give it out. So like if you recognize like, okay, when they're saying this means this, then you pass it forward to the rest of the officers, kind of like explaining like what you found and what they're saying and what that really means.
Yeah.
So, but it is hard, it is tedious, but over time, if you're in it every day, it becomes kind of like repetition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a dangerous job, but I'm glad that people actually do it. I wouldn't want to live in these third worlds where they're just dominated by these gangs and stuff.
I couldn't imagine.
Well, okay, man. I thanks so much for doing this and coming. This was like enlightening.
Awesome.
But yeah, get that when you have that other one out.
Yeah.
Definitely want to come back and talk about it. That's the first time that I've heard about that. Terrorists like with gangs, like cartels, or like
gangs have the infrastructure as a way to think of it in America, and the typical terrorist group has the money. So that's why they're utilizing them like that.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Okay. Well, yeah, guys, here it is again, Gang Undercover. And I'll put the link in the description. Calvin, thank you so much for coming and doing this.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. See you later.